How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Those of you on the phones, be patient. I promise I will get to your phone call. Don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. If you want the live stream, the show notes, the YouTube link. Thanks to all of you who subscribed. Me begging you yesterday to grow our YouTube channel. It's weird. You can be on as many stations as we're on, and people forget that you're everywhere else as well, and it certainly helps to have people there. Before I jump to the next topic, I want to take Bart's phone call. Bart, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, hey, Eric, doing well. Hey, perfect example of what you're talking about is what happened in Georgia after the 1992 redistricting, because back in prior to that, there was one Republican out of 10 Congresspeople in the Georgia delegation. In 1994, there were 8 Republicans and 3 black Democrats after redistricting.
Yeah, look, it was a major shift. And, so that was the election, Bart, where I got my start in politics. I started the college Republicans at Mercer University. There had been a chapter, it had gone away. I brought it back, and I started working for Saxby Chambliss's campaign for Congress. And I fixed the computers, helped them with the FEC reports, did a little grassroots work here and there. And I remember election night, I brought in a computer so that we could watch the returns come in. I had a modem. I had it connected. I could dial in and get the results for anybody else. And they put me in the back room, and the phone rang, and it was Bill Bennett, who had been the education secretary, wrote the Book of Virtues and stuff like that. I was a huge Bill Bennett fan. And I was just flabbergasted that Bill Bennett was on the phone. And he was calling to tell the future congressman it was a wave, that nobody had seen anything like it in living history. And it really was. For those of you who take for granted that the Congress goes back and forth and that Republicans are in charge, Democrats are in charge, Republicans often have the advantage. In 1994, the GOP had been out of power for 42 years. They held the Senate for 4 years under Ronald Reagan, and then that went back to the Democrats as well, and the Democrats kind of reverted to the mean. It was a huge deal for this GOP sweep, but it wasn't just the GOP in Congress. It was down to dog catcher in the South. Southern Democrats overnight, because of Bill Clinton, became Republicans. They had had enough of the Democratic Party. There was a check kiting scandal. The Democrats had been in power for so long, they just took it for granted, and they were writing personal checks off U.S. taxpayers, literally bouncing checks at a U.S. congressional bank and being held not to account for their bounced checks, and they were given taxpayer money. Became a huge scandal of how out of touch the Democrats had become, and the GOP took over. And they held it from 94 to 2006, and they've gotten it back since. But that was a landmark election. And I was there that night. It was a huge, huge election. Now, along the way, and this is relevant to what I want to talk about, the GOP grew a bunch of groups. When I was in college, I was the chairman of the Georgia Federation of College Republicans. Started out as the Mercer chair, became the chair of the Georgia Federation of College Republicans, and there was a scandal involving a chairman who disappeared, kind of fell off the earth, led to the vice chair who allegedly mismanaged money. And so then I was the second vice chair. just because nobody else wanted to run for the position. Story of my life, I became the chairman of the Georgia Federation of College Republicans, and not a single donor in the state who had given money to the Federation of College Republicans would give money because of all the scandal and the taint. So I dissolved the Georgia Federation of College Republicans and started the Georgia Association of College Republicans. So I was the last chairman of the GFCR in Georgia and the first chairman of the Georgia Association of College Republicans, and then passed it off and got rid of it as quick as I could. I was a lawyer for the College Republicans nationally for a number of years, and I just cannot tell you how much I have disdain for a lot of these young groups. I do events occasionally with the Fulton County Young Republicans, and they tend to be young professionals in business, and they are about the only group I enjoy hanging out with in politics because they're young professionals, and they've got a reputation. They don't want to burn bridges, but what you find behind the scenes with whether it's the college Republicans or the young Republicans, which tend to be the college Republicans after college, a lot of it can be very distasteful, and you get a lot of people who have little power in life who decide to acquire a lot of power inside these organizations, and you get the groupthink. And under Donald Trump's tenure in office, we have the edgelords. You know what the edgelords are, even if you don't know that's what they're called. They're the people who online push the envelope. They say the most outrageous things. I was once an edgelord. I learned my lesson. These kids behind the scenes say the most atrocious, abominable things. They are vile. They are, in some cases, deeply racist. And here's a problem, is that under Donald Trump, there has been this festering belief that we should be like the left and have no enemy to the right of me. And it doesn't matter how vile the person is, how awful the things are that they say, that we should give them a pass because on the left, they give people a pass. In fact, I got to say, I saw Matt Walsh put up a tweet earlier. The right doesn't stick together. That's our biggest problem by far. Conservatives are quick to denounce each other, jump on dog piles, disavow, attack their allies. I said a few weeks ago we all need to band together in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, and the answer I got back from a lot of people on the right was basically, no. Well, okay then, guys. We'll just lose instead. The left will keep up the united front and defend their guys no matter what, while we keep throwing each other to the wolves at every opportunity. Great plan. You got that? Matt Walsh thinks we will lose if we don't become like the left. Matt Walsh has never run political campaigns in his life. I have run a lot of political campaigns in my life before I was a pundit, before I was on television, before I was on radio, before I was a national Republican conservative commentator. I was a campaign manager and consultant who traveled the nation running races pretty damn successfully. And you know what? We don't keep a united front. We do police our own. I will not share the stage with the anti-Semites. I will not share the stage with the pro-abortion Republicans. I won't vote for a pro-abortion Republican. It was back in 2016. That was one of my principal grievances against Donald Trump, and why I couldn't support him is I was pretty sure he's pro-abortion. He's turned out, thankfully, to be one of the best pro-life presidents we ever had. I got a lot of friends who back in the day when Rudy Giuliani ran for president, they backed him because of 9/11. I was like, I can't back him. He's pro-abortion. I'm not going to join a coalition that abandons life. I'm not going to join a coalition that abandons Israel. I'm not going to join a coalition of a bunch of racist, anti-Semite, neo-Nazi wannabes, and there are too many of those people festering on the right. And Matt Walsh says, because the left doesn't condemn the anti-Semites and the communists, I'm not going to condemn the anti-Semite pro-abortion people on my side. No enemies to the right of me. But you know what? I don't know what this desire is on our side to have a victim mentality and to have our side believe that we are victims, but we're not victims. You know what we're doing because we police our side? We're winning. Let me give you the data. Right now, the right controls 56% of state legislative seats in the nation. Did you know that? That the right controls a majority of state legislative seats in the nation? 41% of states have trifectas that are controlled by conservatives. That is both state houses and the governor's mansion, only 36.5 for the left. Republicans control 27 governor's mansions. The Democrats control 23. We're not a victim, and we're not losing. And for some reason, Matt Walsh is convinced that if we don't behave like the left, we're going to lose. We don't behave like the left, and we're winning. The clue there should be we're winning, except there are too many people online on the right who want to be permanent victims. And, oh, you're always a victim. It's why they go after Tim Keller. It's why they go after other people who want to elevate Christ above politics. It's why they go after people on the right who want to hold their side accountable and clean up their side. I don't want anything to do with the anti-Semites on our side. I don't want to have anything to do with the neo-Nazis on our side. I want to clean up our side. The Politico has this big story about the edgelords of the right, and there are those on the right who say we should give these kids a pass. We should allow them to say the terrible things that they've been saying. I don't think we should. And you know why I don't think we should? Because that's the sort of behavior that gets you the left. And the American people are rejecting the left. Why are the American people rejecting the left? They're rejecting the left because the left has gone bat crap crazy. They're full of communists and anti-Semites. They're full of people who hate the United States. And there's a festering group on the right, by the way, who hate the United States as well and are convinced we need a civil war, that they can remake it in their own image because they got more guns and muscle than the left, except they don't control the ports or the airports or the major cities in the country, even if they're in red states. They've just convinced themselves. Politico has this story. Leaders of young Republican groups throughout the country worried what would happen if their Telegram chat ever got leaked, but they kept typing anyway. They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people, and they mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who they believe supported slavery. William Hendricks, the Kansas young Republican vice chair, used the words in, well, with the GA on the end or the GUH on the end, variations of the racial slur more than a dozen times. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans, referred to rape as epic. Peter Gunta, who at the time was chair of the same organization, wrote a message sent in June that everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. Gunta was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation, the 15,000-member political organization for Republicans aged 18 to 40. It's going to create some of the greatest psychological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers. When do we start bullying? That's what they replied. If they vote for us, why would they be gassed? I'm ready to watch people burn. Can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. I'm ready to watch people burn now. They said all sorts of awful, vile stuff. They were racist. They were anti-Semitic. They said things in private chats they would never say in public. And you all have private chats as well, where you would not say stuff in public. And usually it's between a group of friends. And there's a great meme that I subscribe to, that everybody should have a group of friends that if their group chat ever got out, they would all lose their jobs. That's how good of friends you are. And we all have those friend groups. I have those friend groups, and don't deny it, you do too. What I don't have is a massive group of young Republicans echoing Hitler or chanting all sorts of anti-Semitic slogans. In fact, in my group chat, we're all very pro-Israel and want to wipe out Hamas. And you know what's happened? These kids are losing their jobs today. They're being exposed, many of them as real racists. They decided that there were no controls. They could be the braggadocious edgelord bros who could talk about hating Jews and raping women as punishment for not getting their way. And they're losing their jobs. Their names are now on the internet as being tied to some horrid, vile statements they made. They will struggle to get jobs in politics now, and they joined the Young Republicans to advance their career in politics. Some of them wanted to get elected to office. They probably now will not get elected to office. They're being held accountable for their words. They're being tossed. There are enemies to my right, and there are to you as well. If you can tolerate anti-Semites within the Republican Party and think we should allow them to advance in the party, I'm pretty sure I don't want to be in a party with you. If you think we should advance a pro-abortion agenda in the Republican Party, I don't want to be in the party with you. And I'm not going to defend you. And if you disagree with me, you shouldn't feel compelled to defend me. And the Republican Party is pushing these kids out the door for the horrible things they said. They're being held accountable. Now, Democrats, you do Jay Jones, because you're awful quiet about him while we on our side are taking responsibility for the edgelords on our side and pushing them out the door. You people keep making excuses for Jay Jones. So get rid of your smug superiority complex, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to sit in the corner of shame because I said something that was deeply untrue, and I knew it was wrong, and I said it anyway because I had Memphis on my mind, and I now need to give credit where it is due to the listener who heard me and called me out because he is correct, and I am an idiot at the moment. Jim, thank you, sir. God bless you. Shame on me, because I was thinking Memphis and West Memphis, but I said St. Louis and East St. Louis, and I said Arkansas. West Memphis is in Arkansas. East St. Louis is in Illinois, way the heck north up the Mississippi River. Shame on me. Shame, shame. I am embarrassed. I am horrified at myself that I said that, and I appreciate Jim calling me out on that. Shame, 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 shame. Shame on me. Wow. And here just yesterday, I was laughing at my son because he couldn't remember a state capital. And I just did this. I'm not going to tell my kid that I made the screw up, but I did. But yeah, West Memphis is in Arkansas, obviously to the west of Memphis. And East St. Louis is obviously east of St. Louis, but it's actually up in Illinois, further up the Mississippi River. Just so you know, when I was in college, I had to read a book on East St. Louis and its schools and how terrible it was. And so don't send the National Guard to East St. Louis since it's Illinois and they don't want you there. But send them to St. Louis. St. Louis has got all sorts of problems. Now, you know what you don't have a problem with? Banking, if you use Old Glory Bank, because they're a great bank and you could use Old Glory Bank as your bank. Go to oldglorybank.com today. Put a /Eric, E-R-I-C-K, and you can get to my landing page. So I get credit if you open an account. It takes less than 8 minutes. That's actually, no, I didn't go to oldglorybank.com/Eric. I just went to oldglorybank.com at the time. They didn't have my beautiful landing page set up for you to be able to get an account. But I got an account. I got a checking account. I got a savings account. There are no-fee checking and no-fee savings account. I got them. You can too. You can get business checking. You can get premium accounts. If you're a veteran, first responder, if you're active duty military, they'll waive certain fees for you. They've got great deals for you. They're FDIC insured. You can do home loans and car loans. You can do CDs. They're a fully functioning bank in businesses. They take time to know you and your business in case you ever need extra help. They're very hands-on with businesses. They're a bank by conservatives who were started by concerns over the debanking trends in America. They're headquartered in Oklahoma City. And by the way, in a few minutes, your Senator Markwayne Mullin is going to join me at the bottom of this hour from Oklahoma. Old Glory Bank is headquartered in Oklahoma City. You go to oldglorybank.com/Eric today, oldglorybank.com/ERICK, member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. It really is my bank. It can be your bank as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Eric Erickson here across the United States. I'm delighted to be with you. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Been growing in Oklahoma. I'm on in Oklahoma City. I'm on in Tulsa, spreading around the state, the two biggest talk stations in that state. And boy, I've got a bone to pick with my next guest because somebody's lying. And I got to get to the bottom of it. He's actually calling to talk about the government shutdown, and I'm totally going to ambush him, and I got to be careful because he could totally kick my butt in real life. Senator Markwayne Mullin joining me by phone. Senator, I got a bone to pick with you.
Well, I heard you say that, and I started smiling. I was like, what a way to be introduced to the show.
I mean, you listen, in real life, I mean, you and my wife both can totally kick my butt. She's taller than me, does strongman competitions. You do mixed martial arts. But I read your Wikipedia here, and it says a member of the Cherokee Nation, Mullin is the first Native American senator since Ben Nighthorse Campbell. That's a lie. We all know Elizabeth Warren is, and I want to know why you did this.
Well, as President Trump refers to her as Pocahontas, I I think you could also call her Pinocchio at the same time.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I just think Massachusetts, I mean, given what's their names we learned about with the Pilgrims, you got to give her some credit there. And just sorry, I saw that. I was like, wait a second.
The craziest, I know this isn't what we're going to talk about, but the craziest thing is how, I'm not a guy that gets offended about anything, really. I mean, I'm in politics, so being politically correct and being offended is two things I don't have time for. But the thing that just bugged me is when she said, "But I have high cheekbones and look at my nose," and I'm like, "Ow!" I mean, wow. That's like talking about someone's hair. I mean, it's so ridiculous to think that that's coordinated with, being Cherokee, but
yeah.
it's a running joke. Believe me, we always talk about it. And I sit on a couple committees with her, and I've probably poked fun at her, I don't know, maybe a half dozen times in live hearings because of it.
Gosh, what a woman. Okay, look, that's not what you called to talk about, but I saw that and I just started laughing. So, but so today, I don't know if you know this or not, and I saw Brendan Buck, who I used to work, I think, with Paul Ryan, pointed this out, that there is not a single front page story in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, or the New York Times today about a government shutdown. And I would be hard pressed in my life to recognize. In fact, I got an email from a listener this morning who said that they got their passport renewal in the mail yesterday, even though the government's been shut down, and they're not sure how or why they did, but they were expecting not to get it. And yet life seems to go on for everybody.
Well, because the difference between President Trump and his true leadership and a community organizer with Obama, and you got to compare those two shutdowns. President Obama, he chose to make it as painful as possible for the American people. I mean, he literally put up barricades around the National Mall and around monuments, which, by the way, takes no staffing. Mm-hmm. But he put up barricades because he didn't want people to have access to it. He sent everybody home and said that Social Security checks weren't going to go out, even though we were shut down over discretionary spending, not mandatory spending. So basically, everybody that works inside those offices are getting paid through mandatory spending. And so you don't have to shut those offices down. Those are two different buckets, but he did. That what President Trump has done here is he's went through methodically with Russ Vogt and has said, we're going to deem people essential and non-essential based on merit. Is this essential to the federal government's operation every single day, which is obviously passports are. The State Department is. Some of these, woke government programs that the Biden administration stood up is not. And so the Democrats have actually done President Trump and the American people a favor, because President Trump has now been able to look deep into these agencies and choose to say if this is an actual function of the federal government that's working for the people. And when you have to answer that question, because you got to deem them essential or non-essential, you start realizing there's a lot of waste inside the federal government. Right now, we have 750,000 federal employees that is currently being furloughed. And each one meaning that they are deemed non-essential, and now they're going to look into those and say, if you're deemed non-essential, is it a matter of a function because there's people in front of you that can do it, or is it a function of being wasteful spending of the American taxpayer dollars? So, I mean, most people don't know that we're shut down because President Trump has chose not to make it painful for the American people because Schumer wanted to shut down the government. Well,
so now let me ask you the question that is kind of raised by that is should people feel it and know that the Democrats are shutting it down? I'm kind of torn on that because part of me thinks it's a great argument for the GOP to say, see, we can actually have less government, but also, I mean, if nobody really knows the government shut down, how do you hold the Democrats accountable for shutting it down?
Well, right now, no one will know. It's going to be next week and the end of this week, starting yesterday and today and tomorrow when actually the military pay went out early. So everybody today that's in the military went ahead and got paid because the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the President of the United States decided to take the money out of additional programs to make sure the troops are paid, which they had a prerogative to do that. all the federal employees, starting tomorrow, they won't receive pay. That's when people are start feeling it. It's frustrating right now when you hear about these air traffic control towers that are empty because people aren't showing up for work because they're making a narrative that they're not being paid. That's absolutely not true. They have not missed any paychecks. Their union has and has encouraged members to call in sick, which I think is ridiculous that they're doing that. And then they also know there isn't one single federal employee out there that has been sent home because it is deemed non-essential that's not going to get back pay. Everybody gets back pay. Everyone will get back pay regardless if you're at work or if you're working. So no one's going to be working for free. So the question is, should they fill it? I think as a leader, you shouldn't make the American people feel something that Chuck Schumer is using for political gain. This is Schumer's shutdown, and so why would you want to make everybody feel what a career politician Chuck Schumer is doing just because he's afraid of AOC? So I commend the president for handling it the way that he is.
So what do you think the timeline is for the Democrats? I know that there's conversation I woke up to this morning about Thanksgiving. There doesn't seem to be urgency. And to your point, I do think with this protest this weekend, the Democrats are too scared to attempt to reopen the government. But I'm worried that our side goes wobbly. And the way in my head I see it playing out is if we offer them nothing, eventually they will reopen the government. They're going to have to for their own constituent needs. And you're going to start this fight on the left where it becomes this all-consuming fight and pushes them further to the left, which I think, frankly, politically is good for us. Well,
I think yes, I don't disagree with that statement. But I think how this thing comes to an end is really probably going to take it could come to end next week. I don't think there's any way in the world they can reopen the government until after this No Kings rally that they're having in different parts of the United States, but mainly here in Washington, D.C. It's absurd that this is why they're shutting it down, but they quote the Democrat colleagues of senators that are a little bit more level-headed, if you can say that about really any Democrats right now in the Senate, but there are some that are pretty level-headed, and mainly the three people that have, voted with the Republicans now to open the government up almost every time. They, some of them and some of the other ones have said that the optics, according to Chuck Schumer, the optics doesn't look good for us to open it up before the rally because they don't want to be they don't want to be deemed that they're caving to President Trump and therefore they would get primary elections, because this is all about a primary election, because you really can't argue why they're not voting for a CR, because literally the CR that we're voting on, the clean resolution, Chuck Schumer wrote last year when Joe Biden was in office. That's why, it's a clean CR. This is the exact same CR we voted for last year to keep the government from shutting down. So he can't argue with why he's voting against it other than the optics of caving to President Trump. But if they don't open it next week, they'll wait until November 1st, gambling that the rates that they're stating, which isn't been stated by the insurance companies, by the way, but they're stating is going to increase, that the tides turn in their favor, because right now politically they're losing. The American people disagree with the stance that Chuck Schumer has taken. So if they feel like they can get out of it in a win, they're going to think that the pressure of people's premiums increasing will be enough to make Republicans cave. I will tell you, we're not given an inch. We have nothing to negotiate on. The Chuck Schumer wants to hold the American people hostage for $1.5 trillion to put the fraud and the waste and abuse back in that the one big beautiful bill cut out. And they're wanting to do it in return to open the government for 4 weeks. Think about how much that's going to cost the American taxpayers for 4 weeks of government to be open and no guarantee it's not going to shut back down for $1.5 trillion with a T, $1 trillion.
Yeah, that one, just kicking the can a little further makes no sense to me.
No sense.
And I'm sympathetic to a degree on healthcare, but also I just keep going back to the Democrats are the ones who first voted to get rid of this healthcare benefit, and now suddenly it's become their hill to die on. It seems like if it wasn't this, it would be something else, because they boxed themselves, from my perspective, into a corner where they believe Donald Trump is the second coming of Hitler, and if they fund him, they're funding Hitler. So you got the base doesn't want to fund him at all, which also, I guess, to me seems like the Democrats have to pass the clean CR, because if it went back to the House Democrats with their rhetoric, they couldn't actually vote to open the government again, because
that's right.
They're saying they're funding the Gestapo and Hitler and all the extreme rhetoric. It's just
you're seeing that absolutely right. And just for your listeners that may not know what you talked about, that they voted to end this program that now they're trying to keep in place for Obamacare. It's called the premium tax, and the premium tax was put in place during COVID in 2021. I'm showing my age here. In 2021, and it was voted 100% by Democrats. The Democrats controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate. That's when you had Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, you had Chucky Schumer as leader, and you had Biden as president. They put this preemptive tax in there, or premium tax put in place, and they did it in place to expire, because it was only supposed to be a subsidy for COVID, because the insurance company said they needed a little bit of assistance. If they wanted to make it permanent, they could have made it permanent, because there wasn't one single Republican that voted for it. This passed 100% with on a partisan line, with Republicans or Democrats voting for it. So they could have made it permanent. They chose to make it to expire it at this time because it costs taxpayers $40 billion a year to subsidize insurance companies. That COVID is over now. They're making plenty of money. I mean, plenty of money. And I'm a capitalist. I'm okay with private companies making money. I have no problem with that. But for them to say that now taxpayers have to continue to subsidize them, or that premiums are going to go up 200 to 300%, is absolutely ridiculous. And the insurance companies should be held accountable for it. And the Democrats need to take the heat for a program they started and that they knew was going to expire.
Yeah, it just bad argument from their side when you get into it. Hey, Senator, and for those of you just tuning in, I'm talking to Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Let me throw a wild card at you off the shutdown, and I appreciate your time on that one, but it's an issue I paid attention to that I don't think gets a lot of attention, and talked to your governor about it and some of the local officials, and that's the Supreme Court decision from a couple of years ago that essentially says that Oklahoma is all Cherokee Nation territory as well, and it's confused the laws in Oklahoma as to what laws apply and whatnot. Has there been any attempt to resolve this issue in Washington?
You know, it's the McGirt decision, and basically Gorsuch, which this is off left field, right?
Yes.
But Gorsuch, who is supposed to be the supreme know-it-all for Indian country, which I will tell you, and this comes from a wrestler my whole life, and a fighter, and then also a politician. He's the most arrogant man I've ever met in my life. If there was term limits that should apply to a Supreme Court justice, it should be him.
Wow. Because
this is his disaster. And I've met with him personally trying to talk to him about it, and he's like, it's like a 3-year-old trying to argue with their dad. It's just probably not going to go well. And so, he deemed that the reservation line still existed. He made after the ruling, he made an insert into his findings, and he said Congress should act. Well, when he said the reservation line still existed, it was different, because reservations was Oklahoma, at least the eastern side of Oklahoma, was a reservation.
Right.
And then inside the reservation, each tribe had its own territory, with the exception of Osage. Osage had a separate reservation. But then it made those territories inside the reservation for each tribe. Each tribe claimed it as their own reservation, which is really, it was never designed that. You can't find a map anywhere that said Cherokee Nation had a reservation, Choctaw has a reservation, Cherokees or the Chickasaws, the
right.
Shawnee, or the Creek had their own reservations. Well, because he'd said that, tribal law went into place, and it superseded a lot of local government, so local sheriff and local police departments in the cities, because there's not a city or town in the eastern side of the state that isn't within that territory or now reservation.
Right.
And so only federal officers at that point can patrol it outside of tribal police, and which means the FBI. The FBI isn't designed to do that. So what's happened is it's quite a mess. I mean, it's literally a melting pot for criminal activity now because of the confusion of the jurisdiction. We're having a tremendous amount of drug issues, illegal drug problems, illegal grows, marijuana grows, a lot of money laundering, a lot of petty theft, even traffic violations. If you're driving, if you got a tribal tag on, if you get pulled over by local police or county or even state, if they even have jurisdiction over to issue that ticket now, it's the closest thing that I would understand that a Wild West looks like.
Wow.
And there has to be clarity.
Yeah.
He has made the argument, this gets in the weeds, he's made the argument that Congress should act because they never dissolved the reservation. Well, I disagree with that because in 1896, Congress did enact the allotment, which no land was stolen from tribal person or tribal people. They are actually giving a true deed to the land that their family claimed, and that was an allotment land. I still own 250 acres of my family's allotment. And then they ended, Congress started and acted in 1896, ended it in 1906, and that's Congress acting because we became a state in 1907. So in my mind, how could the reservation still exist if everyone that was a tribal member that was enrolled in the Dawes Report and claimed land got true, clear deed to the property they lived on?
First of all, I appreciate you answer the question, but two, they're yelling at me that I got to go to commercial break or it's going to cause a problem. But thank you, I appreciate
that's in the weeds. I get that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later. All right, bye.
Senator Markwayne Mullin, passionate on that last answer. Glad I asked it. Hello there. Thanks again to Markwayne Mullin. I got to jump to commercial because, well, that was a very long segment. I got to tell you, Americans for Prosperity would love to have you on board. If you want to get engaged with Americans for Prosperity, you go to afpvolunteer.com. You can learn to knock on doors and persuade your neighbors that you're right on the issues, but you don't have to. You can just be the most informed member of your circle of friends. You can learn how to go to your member of Congress and advocate for common sense conservative reforms, or go to your state or local legislator, your city council, and they just get you engaged in the process of advancing freedom around the country and common sense conservative reforms, from school choice to the president's tax plan to common sense permitting reforms to business deregulations. All you do to get engaged is you go to afpvolunteer.com. You sign up. Markwayne Mullin, I've met him a couple of times at one of the AFP conferences. Great guy, and they are a great conservative organization, the largest leading grassroots group in the nation. You go to afpvolunteer.com. That's afpvolunteer.com.